Emperor Caracalla, Alexander the Great wannabe, who meant a pathetic end. Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, better known as Caracalla, was a Roman emperor whose reign was marked by ambition, brutality, and an almost obsessive desire to emulate the legendary Macedonian conqueror Alexander the Great. Caracalla's fascination with Alexander shaped much of his political, military, and personal identity. Yet his attempts to mirror the Hellenistic hero led to costly campaigns, political alienation, and ultimately ignominious death. We'll explore Caracalla's efforts to become a new Alexander and the factors that contributed to his downfall. Born Lucius Septimius Basanius in 188 CE in Lugdunum, modern-day Lyon, Caracalla was the eldest son of Emperor Septimius Severus and Julia Domna. His father's rise to power during the chaotic Year of the Five Emperors placed the young Caracalla in a position of privilege, and by age 9 he was named co-Augustus, marking him as a future ruler. His father's propaganda linked the Severan dynasty to the Antonine emperors, renaming Caracalla as Marcus Aurelius Antoninus to evoke the legacy of Marcus Aurelius. However, it was Alexander the Great, not Roman predecessors, who became Caracalla's ultimate role model. Caracalla's fascination with Alexander bordered on obsession, often described as Alexander mania by ancient sources like Cassius Dio and Herodian. Alexander, who had conquered vast territories from Greece to India by his early 30s, represented the pinnacle of military prowess and imperial ambition. For Caracalla, living in an era of political instability and external threats, Alexander's legacy offered a blueprint for consolidating power and achieving immortal fame. His emulation of Alexander manifested in several ways, from military reforms to personal style and propaganda. But these efforts often backfired, contributing to his reputation as a tyrant. Imitations of Alexander's legacy: military reforms and the Macedonian phalanx. One of Caracalla's most striking attempts to imitate Alexander was his creation of a so-called Macedonian phalanx. According to ancient sources, Caracalla levied a force of 16,000 soldiers trained in the style of Alexander's phalanx, equipped with pikes and modeled on the Macedonian formations that had been obsolete for centuries. This move was likely intended to evoke Alexander's military genius, particularly as Caracalla prepared for campaigns against the Parthian Empire, mirroring Alexander's conquests of Persia. Eastern campaigns and Parthian ambitions. Caracalla's military campaigns were heavily influenced by his desire to replicate Alexander's conquests in the East. In 216 CE, he launched a campaign against the Parthian Empire, a formidable rival on Rome's eastern frontier. This mirrored the Macedonian conqueror's campaigns against the Persian Empire under Darius III. The Constitutio Antoniniana and universal citizenship. Caracalla's most enduring legacy, the Constitutio Antoniniana, granted Roman citizenship to all freeborn men in the empire. Some historians argue this was inspired by Alexander's vision of a unified empire, often interpreted as a brotherhood of man. By extending citizenship, Caracalla may have aimed to create a cohesive empire loyal to him personally, much as Alexander sought to integrate diverse cultures under his rule. The edict refers to a unified community of my people, suggesting a Caracallan empire modeled on Alexander's ideals. However, critics like Cassius Dio claimed the edict was primarily a means to increase tax revenue, casting doubt on its altruistic motives. Personal style and propaganda. Caracalla adopted physical and symbolic elements to mimic Alexander's appearance and persona. Ancient sources note that he tilted his head to one side, a gesture reportedly inspired by Alexander's distinctive posture, as depicted in art. He also wore Macedonian-style clothing, such as the kausia, a Macedonian hat, and commissioned artworks that blended his image with Alexander's. Herodian describes paintings and statues showing a single figure with combined faces, Caracalla's and Alexander's, emphasizing their conflation. These efforts were part of a broader propaganda campaign to present Caracalla as Alexander's successor. The context of Caracalla's reign. Caracalla's obsession with Alexander must be understood within the context of his tumultuous reign. After his father's death in 211 CE, Caracalla and his brother Geta briefly ruled as co-emperors. Their rivalry culminated in Caracalla ordering Geta's assassination, followed by a damnatio memoriae that erased Geta's image from public records and resulted in the massacre of thousands of his supporters. This act of fratricide, justified by Caracalla as self-defense against a supposed conspiracy, alienated the Senate and much of the Roman elite. His reliance on the military, particularly the Praetorian Guard, further strained his relationship with traditional power structures. Caracalla's emulation of Alexander was partly an attempt to legitimize his rule in a period of instability. By casting himself as a new Alexander, he sought to project strength and divine favor, appealing to both the military and the diverse populations of the empire. His mother, Julia Domna, played a significant role in administration, allowing Caracalla to focus on his military persona as a fellow soldier, another nod to Alexander's camaraderie with his troops. However, his brutal policies, including mass executions and heavy taxation, fueled resentment and painted him as a tyrant in the eyes of contemporaries like Cassius Dio. The pathetic end of Caracalla. Caracalla's dream of becoming a new Alexander ended abruptly on April 8, 217 CE, when he was assassinated by a disaffected soldier, Julius Marcialus, near Carrhae in Mesopotamia. The plot was orchestrated by Macrinus, a Praetorian prefect who succeeded Caracalla as emperor. Caracalla was killed while urinating by the roadside, a humiliating end for an emperor who aspired to the grandeur of Alexander. Legacy and historical judgment. The reasons for Caracalla's failure were manifold. His military campaigns were costly and yielded limited success. His reliance on military loyalty alienated the Senate and drained imperial resources. The Constitutio Antoniniana, while groundbreaking, did not foster the envisioned unity, as it was seen by many as a fiscal maneuver rather than a visionary policy. His military reforms, including recreation of phalanx, were impractical in a Roman context, while Alexander's conquests united diverse peoples under a charismatic leader. Caracalla's heavy-handed tactics and reliance on fear fractured the empire. Caracalla's death, far from the heroic, underscored the gap between his aspirations and reality. Caracalla's efforts aimed to cement his place in history as a great conqueror, but they were marred by impracticality, brutality, and political missteps. His assassination marked a humiliating end to a reign defined by unbridled ambition and excess. Caracalla's story serves as a cautionary tale of how the pursuit of a legendary ideal, without the wisdom to adapt it to one's context, can lead to ruin rather than glory.